Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
To do this is he's got a small speech which he's going to make, and at the end of it we are going to have a conversation. I'm hoping that we will have time to take at least one or two questions from the audience. You will find these cards on your table, so please, if you have a question, write them, hand them over to people. They'll come to me, and if I think they are interesting enough and if we have the time, I'll post them to Mukesh. The idea behind this session, which is what we've discussed, is to try and give you a glimpse inside the head of a person who's really thinking big, who's thinking of interesting things, who's thinking of innovative things, who's thinking of the next big leap. So Mukesh, thank you very much for doing this, and the lectern's all yours.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good afternoon. Thank you to Hindustan Times and Shobna ji for making me a part of this summit once again. The Hindustan Times Leadership Summit is about Hindustan's leadership in the world. 13 years ago, when I spoke here, India was a $500 billion economy. And I had said in 2004 that India would be a $5 trillion economy in 20 years. Today, that prediction seems certain. Indeed, it will be achieved well before 2024. Today, this summit is about India emerging as a preeminent global leader. Dear friends, I come from the world of business. Any nation's leadership role is determined first and foremost by its economic leadership. Therefore, I want to talk to you about why India will become a global economic leader. Today, India's GDP is about $2.5 trillion and ranks number 6 in the world. Can we triple it to 7 trillion in the next 10 years and then become the third largest economy in the world? Yes, we can. Can we cross the 10 trillion mark by 2030 and close the gap between India and China and India and US? Yes, we can. Can India become the most prosperous nation in the world, overtaking both the US and China within this century? Yes, I think we most certainly can. We are seeing, and the entire world is seeing, a new and resurgent India. And I believe that the coming 3 decades will be the defining decades for India. In 2047, India will celebrate the centenary of our independence. Around the same time, China will celebrate 100 years of the birth of the People's Republic of China. Today, the whole world is talking about China's rise and India's rise. This is civilizational rebirth for both India and China. And to me, there is nothing surprising about it. In the long history of mankind, India and China were the most prosperous nations before the 17th century. And after a short interval of 300 years of Western domination, the center of gravity of the world economy is shifting back to China and India. But friends, today, again, I wish to make a prediction. By the middle of the 21st century, India's rise will be higher than China's rise. And more attractive to the world. Yes, India's rise will be higher than China's rise and more attractive to the world. India will provide a superior and different developmental model, a model that will create equitable and inclusive growth based on technology, democracy, good governance, and a society-wide culture of empathy. Let me elaborate why I believe this is possible. Friends, energy and technology have been the key drivers of human progress. No country has ever emerged as a global power without embracing new technologies wholeheartedly and without using new generation energy sources widely. The first industrial revolution used coal and steam power to mechanize physical activity. It began towards the end of the 18th century in England and lasted for over 100 years. This shifted the economic power from China and India to Europe. The second industrial revolution used electricity and oil to mechanize and mobilize industrial processes for mass production and distribution. It started towards the end of the 19th century and prevailed for roughly another 100 years. And this shifted the center of economic power to US from Europe. The third industrial revolution that began roughly in the mid-70s used electronics and information technology to increase productivity, automation, and greater customization. The US was the key beneficiary of this, followed by Japan. Among the developing nations, China benefited from this to emerge as the manufacturer of the world. Each technological revolution completely rewrites the rules of the game and creates a new world order. It creates opportunities for early adopters of that technology to leapfrog into positions of global leadership, power, and influence. Through the first two industrial revolutions, India remained on the fringes. India started catching up in the computer-driven third revolution. Friends, the fourth industrial revolution is now upon us. The foundation of this revolution is data connectivity, computing, and artificial intelligence. It is marked by a fusion of technologies straddling the physical, digital, and biological worlds. I believe human civilization will collectively achieve more in the next 30 years than what it has achieved in the last 300. I think it is crucial for all Indians to fully understand and internalize and change their mindsets on three defining characteristics of this new age. The first defining characteristic is that the world is going from linear to exponential. In a linear world, if you take 30 steps, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you travel 30 meters in 30 steps. In an exponential world, where 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, if you take 30 steps, you reach 1 billion. Exponential technologies and processes start slowly, but very quickly, they bring about dramatic changes. Just think about it. Mobile telephony, the internet, e-commerce, social networks, virtual assistants, self-driven cars. These were science fiction just a few years ago. Today, they are facts of science. Early adopters of each of these shifts will have the opportunity to leapfrog the competition and create unprecedented societal value. Those who do not will be outcompeted. They will become irrelevant. The second defining characteristic that we all have to understand is that the world goes from scarcity to abundance. For most of our history, humanity has progressed by extending our mastery over nature and by marshaling natural resources. But in the digital age, when you put the power of data connectivity, computing, software, information, and intelligence together, the price performance of everything changes drastically. Combined with the rapid strides we are making in renewable energy, life sciences, robotics, 3D printing, and machine intelligence, what we are looking at is the future possibility of abundance in the true sense of the word. Abundant energy, abundant health, abundant knowledge, abundant agriculture output, abundant manufacturing capacity, abundant renewable materials and energy. And unlike the past, this abundance will not be just for a privileged few, but for all. I believe that we are at the doorsteps of creating ubiquitous availability and affordability in each of these areas for every human being on the earth. The third defining characteristic is that we will see a migration from goods and services economy to one powered by intelligent services. Today, with the state-of-art digital techniques, it is already possible to monitor billions of data points from smartphones and other connected devices in real time, all the time. This information is continuously analyzed by machines, and a service can be provided automatically, not just in response, but even in anticipation of a customer's need. There is no doubt that in the coming years, machine intelligence will augment and multiply our biological intelligence many-fold. This means that truly predictive and targeted services, intelligent services, will be delivered 24/7, creating unparalleled user value, delight, and loyalty. I believe that intelligent services are the next frontier of competitive differentiation and market leadership across countries. We are in the age of super intelligence. What manufacturing was for China, super intelligence can be for India. We have the opportunity to not only rapidly grow on our own economy, but also to be the provider of intelligent services to the rest of the world. In this hyper-connected world, this will mean that a talented craftsman, even in the remotest Indian village, can participate and benefit from the global marketplace. Friends, technology is a great leveler. It provides equal access to all without prejudice or judgment, benefiting only those who are best prepared. It is my firm conviction that India can not only participate in the fourth industrial revolution, but has the opportunity to be a leader. And again, I have three reasons for this conviction. The first, India is a very young nation, 63% of our population under the age of 35. And our youth adopt to technology very easily. They have the talent, they have the ideas, they have entrepreneurial energy, they have the courage to dream big and the ability to realize their dreams. I have no doubt that they will make India the #1 startup nation in the world. Second, India's historical lack of infrastructure is actually a boon in disguise. Not having legacy technology base means we do not have to retrain. We can skip multiple generations of technology and directly embrace the next generation. Third, and most importantly, we have the political vision, leadership and determination and ability to make India a technology leader. Our Prime Minister's Digital India vision has created an alignment among all political parties in this mission of making India a technology leader. From my own experience in rolling out Geo in each and every one of our 29 states, all the leadership has embraced this vision fully. Friends, collectively, these three factors have perfectly positioned India to be a leader in this new age. We can already see early signs of success around us. Take Aadhaar, which was started by my friend Nandan, as an example. With nearly 1.2 billion Indians enrolled, Aadhaar is the world's largest and the most sophisticated biometric ID system. India has created this infrastructure from scratch in the last few years. In this area now, India is a clear leader, and Aadhaar is now decades ahead of advanced economies like the US and China. Or take the example of ISRO. In February this year, ISRO created a world record by launching not one, two, three, but 104 satellites within one single rocket. And this mission carried out not just Indian satellites, but also satellites from 6 other countries. More importantly, this we did in India at a fraction of a cost. India also became the 4th country to reach Mars, and we did that in its first attempt. Or take the example of mobile broadband penetration. Just a couple of years ago, India was ranked 150th in the world in mobile broadband. Today, it is number 1 in the world after the launch of Jio. Today, Indians consume more mobile broadband data than the US and China. So in a sense, we are ahead of the US and China. And if data is destiny, New India is well and truly ready for its new toast with destiny. In the coming years, we will see many such success stories from India. Friends, we now have the opportunity to digitally reinvent all sectors of our economy, whether it is financial services, commerce, manufacturing, agriculture, education, and healthcare. India can leapfrog the world in each one of these sectors. Let me just focus on 3 important sectors: agriculture, education, and healthcare. First, I have chosen agriculture because we cannot ignore the reality of poverty and underdevelopment in rural India. Over 60% of Indians still live in villages. And by 2050, we will have close to 300 million more Indians to feed. Today, average farm yields in India are just 20 to 30% of the best global yields. There is both a pressing need and a golden opportunity to create a digital green revolution, an evergreen revolution. A digital green revolution means, 1, digitally enabled mechanical services to benefit all farmers, irrespective of their land holdings. 2, digitally enabled fertilizers and pesticides to rejuvenate the soil. 3, digitally enabled seed to crop processes to get the best yields and double and triple every farmer's income. 4, digitally enabled water management to achieve more crop per drop. And 5, digitally enabled supply chain from the Kisan to the consumer with full traceability to ensure quality at every stage and remove wastage at every stage. In short, data is not only the new oil, data is also the new soil. The second big digital opportunity is in education. India's population is our biggest asset, but we need good quality education for all to make them a productive asset. The goal is difficult to achieve with conventional infrastructure and traditional methods. We need digital tools and innovation to break geographical, social, language, and economic barriers. 200 million students study in 58,000 colleges, over 700 universities, and 19 lakh schools in India. All of these will be digitally connected, with Jio playing a leadership role. A student anywhere, even in a remote village, can have access to the best teachers and the latest knowledge in the world. Artificial intelligence-based technologies can bring personalized learning adapted to the needs of each student, and which can, in fact, overcome the gaps and constraints of classroom education. like any age, any time, any subject, and in any language. Now it is both possible and necessary to reorient education for the new kinds of productive and creative employment that will replace large numbers of existing mechanical jobs. This will help us in quickly imparting and upgrading the employable skills to millions of our youth. Within a single generation, we can empower and enrich our vast and young human resources to give India a competitive edge in the world. Healthcare is a basic human right for every Indian. However, India cannot emulate any foreign model to ensure this right. Constraints of budget, physical infrastructure, and trained personnel make it difficult to deliver quality healthcare to India's large and growing population. India can overcome these constraints by adopting digital tools and innovations. As in education, the best doctors and the best diagnostic facilities can become accessible to all citizens anywhere in the country. Shared medical devices and predictive healthcare will be able to save lives even in the remotest corners of our country. Fewer doctors and scarce facilities will serve many more patients across the nation. India can thus design a path-breaking and affordable healthcare system that will be a model for the rest of the world. When new technologies touch and transform the lives of all Indians, India's rise becomes inevitable. Reliance is a proud participant in India's rise and privileged to serve this new India. I have been fortunate to participate in building global-scale Reliance businesses in energy, information, and digital services. As energy and information converge in the future, Reliance will contribute even more significantly to India's rise. 5 years ago, when most Indian businesses were investing outside India, we decided to invest over $60 billion in India. We have completed this investment cycle, and we are now ready to commit even more in our next investment cycle. We are doing this out of our undiminished conviction that India is the biggest investment opportunity in the world. Therefore, to foreign investors, I have a simple message. Be a part of India's rise, invest in India, earn in India, grow in India, partner with India, and prosper together with India. Dear friends, as I mentioned earlier, in 30 years, India will celebrate the centenary of our independence. In these 30 years, we can and must aspire to grow from a $2.5 trillion economy to become the most prosperous nation in the world in the 21st century. I will safely predict that from now on, every new generation of Indian will live a better life than the previous generation. As the internet becomes accessible to all Indians, I believe we will be among the first to graduate to the Internet of everything, the Internet of communications, content, and commerce. But I believe that we have only scratched the surface. In the coming years, I can imagine an Internet of intelligence that powers next-generation smart services, an Internet of energy with smart sensors, smart grids, and distributed generation that lays the foundation for our nation's energy security, an Internet of trust that creates the framework for distributed transactions and contracts without intermediaries, an Internet of empathy that harmonizes value creation and life-sustaining human and ethical values. I believe that India is well positioned to combine its demographic, technological, entrepreneurial, and civilization strengths to seize this opportunity and create a bright and prosperous future for our nation. As a nation, we must rise to this occasion. The climb is difficult, the challenges are many, and the goal cannot be achieved by any one person or one enterprise. All of us, 1.3 billion Indians, will have to work together with a single purpose to realize this. We must have a partnership among all sections of society to realize this in the fastest possible time. Collectively, let us commit ourselves to work together to make India's rise a reality and make it irreversible, make it unstoppable, and may God bless us as we embark on this most exciting new era in India's history. In many ways, we are all pilgrims of progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukesh. As you can assume, we have a lot of questions, and Rini is just messed up by putting some questions on top of ones which I had selected. All right. There's, of course, one very interesting question here which gives a mobile number and says, if you're free to say hello after the meeting, please, I want to say hi to you, which we will ignore. Or we'll keep aside, maybe you know this person. There is this fun question which says, you are such a great economic influencer, why haven't you ever thought of being the finance minister of India? Which I think you should answer so that we can get at least that audience question out of the way. No?
I'm in business, not in politics.
Okay. All right. I thought we'd do this a little differently. I've got questions for Mukesh. These are not audience questions, these are my questions. And I've arranged them in order of difficulty, A, B, and C. A, least difficult, C, most difficult. If you want to call them otherwise, you can call A, Simi, B, CNBC, and C, Sebastian. Some of you will know why these names have been chosen. So I'm going to pick these questions out at random and answer them so that we can have some fun. Okay, this is a CNBC question, right? Which means it's B, moderately tough, very focused on business. You spoke about the huge amount of investment that you've made in Jio. And there have been questions asked in several quarters about your ability to recoup this investment and how much time it would take. But you are, everyone knows how shrewd you are a businessman. So it's highly unlikely that you would be doing things for charity. So how soon do you expect Jio to turn profitable?
Well, Jio's results are declared every quarter now. And you can see the trend. And you watch the next few quarters. You will learn in January and you will learn in March. I don't want to predict, but I think we're ahead of our schedule in terms of the returns that we are generating.
Which should we watch closely, Jan or March? I told you this was a CNBC question.
Watch all the 3 quarters. Yeah?
Okay, this is all right, this is actually a 4th category of question. We are going to a slightly more difficult one because, like I said, one idea is to provide people here some insight into what you're thinking and how you make decisions. How do you decide how to enter a business? You spoke about all these interesting new areas that are emerging. What are the parameters a business has to meet before Reliance decides it wants to enter it?
Well, I think the Reliance DNA started from my father when he founded Reliance. And at that time, is ingrained into us that as a business, you must solve problems. And the economic value is more a byproduct of that. So if you look at the history of Reliance, we started with clothing people. We started with textiles. We went into developing the textile industry. We then built our refinery, which was really energy security. We solved the problem at that time in terms of India not importing diesel and petrol. And if we look at our own entry into retail, it was linked to the need for employment creation. And as our balance sheet becomes stronger, right, we still look to solve problems, to create societal values. And now I challenge myself and our people to solve the more difficult problems. And we can take some risks. So what we did with Jio is really we put in and not many in the world had backed us, but as I just explained, we are strong believers that if India and 1.3 billion Indians have to participate in this new world, right? For us, we cannot always have the data infrastructure 20 years after the world. We would have no chance. Today, we have, along with Rajan and Kumar, with all of us as one industry, I think that India in terms of data infrastructure will be ahead of the US by 2019. And so as we move forward, we think about more and more difficult issues that create value for all Indians. And I talked about, I think that agriculture is difficult, and that's something that needs to be taken. Education is important, and healthcare is the most difficult. So we would clearly think about what we can do in each one of these areas.
Okay, follow up to that question, which is also a CNBC question, which is, you spoke about creating value for all Indians. I think it was earlier this week, last week, one of your rivals in the telecom business had an interview in a newspaper where he spoke about Jio actually destroying 50 billion of their value in the telecom business. And there is this perception that is there of Reliance entering into businesses and fundamentally disrupting them and destroying the competition. Do you think that would be an accurate assessment of what's happened in telecom?
Correct your questions many times. Sunil is a good friend of mine, he's not a rival. Right?
A business rival.
I don't think of
Sure.
businesses in terms of... the second piece is, I think that, again, what he said and what I think you are interpreting is different. But just to make my point of view clear, I think that for all of us within industry, right, profits and losses are risks that we take. And I don't think that we can rely on regulators or governments to guarantee our profits or losses. To me, what is most important is, do we really move the country forward? And does the consumer gain? And I think that the question as a journalist that you should be thinking about is that even if there are profits and losses, who gains and who loses? And as long as the consumer gains and the country moves forward, it's worth taking those losses, right? Some of us are big boys, we can afford that.
Yes, that is true. All right. Okay, this question, because you're often referred to in terms of, I mean, a lot of people define you in terms of your wealth. I've seen a lot of descriptions that define you. What does money mean to you now?
Well, frankly, money has never meant much to me. I abhor the labels and the titles which all of you referred to me.
I haven't used it even once.
In terms of where we are. But to me, resources, right, enable you to take risks from a company point of view to which you would have not done. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility. On a personal level, very few people know this, but my sister Nina is somewhere in the audience. I have, from childhood, right, I have, in school and together now, I have never carried money. So I don't have a credit card, I don't carry cash in my pocket. I always have somebody around me who pays for me. So that works.
Okay, so we know who wasn't in the queue last November, right? Okay, there are at least 3 questions here which have come from the audience, which have spoken about what you, in the course of your speech, you also mentioned agriculture, and all of them are saying it's clearly an area where there's so much to be done. Why doesn't someone like you, why doesn't someone like Reliance get into that area in a really significant way and make a difference?
See, I think that, and what I said is, and things that I genuinely believe is that this is a time where things are coming together. There are combinatorial technologies without really covering the landmass with data technologies, without the sensors at the right price, right? Without an overall vision, like, things have to come together. And I think that things are coming together. And India is a great opportunity. And surely, as Reliance, this is a difficult problem to tackle, but we are ready to take on difficult problems, and it's very much on our roadmap. We're building all the resources. We think through we just don't jump into anything. We think through it carefully, but agriculture, education, and healthcare, all three are on our roadmaps, which are, to my mind, the most difficult problems.
They're very
for
fundamental
any economy.
problems.
And they impact all,
But
like
you
a
are
majority
thinking
of our people.
You are
yes.
thinking in terms
Absolutely.
of that. Because both in education and healthcare, you have these little foundational experiments that you've done. But and I don't think all three are probably areas that can benefit from the kind of scale that you usually bring to businesses.
Absolutely. And also what we will be able to do in the next 5 years in terms of just raw usage of technology. And if we can solve, this is the most difficult problem to solve. If we can solve it in India, we can pretty much use that anywhere else in the world. And that is why I say India has the opportunity to lead the world, right? We have the opportunity first to solve it in India and then take it to the rest of the world.
Okay. 4 more questions, 1 from category C and 3 from category A, which means 1 Sebastian and 3 Simis. Okay, first for the tough question. From its inception, Reliance has always had this reputation and image of being an extremely competitive company. And you look at most of the businesses that you've gotten into, especially Geo, for instance. You were not an early entrant, you were a relative late entrant. There were incumbents in place, and not just ordinary incumbents, but there were huge incumbents. And you really seem to be relishing the challenge of this competition and everything else. So is this something you thrive on? Is it something that motivates you? Or do you just look at it from the consumer point of view?
Well, our DNA is that we are very focused, right? And we always believe in the principle of saying that if you focus on the goal, you will overcome all obstacles. If you focus on the obstacle, you will never reach your goal. And we are all believers of first principles. And from our point of view, while the external world can see it, we are pretty much, we work very hard and we focus on the goals that we want to achieve. And we focus on first principles. And clearly, we at Reliance want to be the best in the world. Like it was even in the 70s and 80s when my father said that why should the Koreans and the Taiwanese lead the polyester industry, right? Why can't we in India be? And today we are known, we are the biggest in both not only in size but in quality. We have exactly the same conversation with Sunil and Rajan and ourselves in terms of saying that in the data-driven digital services business, why can't India be the best? And that's what drives us. So I'm sorry if it appears very competitive from outside, but we just want to be the best in terms of what we do.
Okay, 3 questions, like I said, from category A. Your children are now in the business, and you worked very closely with your father when you first got into the business. What was the one thing which has really helped you that you learned from your father? And what is the one thing which is really helping you now that you've learned from your children?
Well, one thing that I would never dare tell my father is that, Dad, you don't get it. And I pretty much like. I think that with this generation, I like.
Do you-
That's
do you get-
that's the big difference.
Do you
in
get a
terms
lot of that?
I get quite a bit of that in terms of like, I saw this speech and like the first thing Isha told me is, "Dad, very boring," like all this stuff. So. And I think that as far as my father is concerned, he's been really the biggest influence. He treated me like a friend, and I hope that I can treat my children as a friend.
What are you reading now? Do you get time to read?
Yeah, I make it a point to read quite a bit. So I have three. I read a lot of technical stuff. So I'm reading gene editing, CRISPR, blockchain on the technical side. I read non-fiction. So I read 5 or 6 things at one time. So then in non-fiction, I'm reading. There's a great book that's come on Leonardo da Vinci.
By Walter Isaacson.
By Isaacson. He's my favorite author, so I read everything that he is. And then I'm just finished Dan Brown's Origins. So I like him as... so I read fiction,
so you read
non-fiction,
fiction also.
and technical all at the same time.
Excellent. Okay, last question. How would you define success?
Well, for me, it's really fulfillment, which is important, which is the lasting satisfaction that you have, that you've really tried your best and you've given it everything that you have, right? And sometimes, like, in spite of that, you might not achieve your outcome, and you have to reconcile with that. And that's what my philosophy in life is.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, Mukesh Ambani.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. May I request Mr. Rajiv Verma?
Okay, so that was Mukesh Ambani, who was speaking at the 15th edition of the HT Summit. Essentially, the crux of what he is saying is that the king of communications is, of course, the internet. The focus is, of course, on healthcare, on space and technology.